And greetings, everybody. Welcome to those of you who joined us from the AD Robles talk. It was well attended, well over 350 people. And I would guess he said that was one of the biggest live shows he's hosted. So we don't know where this is going. We're privileged to have Dr. Sandy Pigeon here. Brother, it's been a long time since we've done a YouTube show. We've seen each other in other venues, but our little tag team hasn't shown up together in quite a long time. How are you?
Pretty good. I guess that maybe I should go put a hat on because of the shine on my forehead, but I don't know. So how'd it go, brother? I didn't. We were out. First of all, I had some stuff going on for work. I had to tune into that. Then we just took my daughter and my wife out to lunch. So.
Oh, I'm doing fine, and the show went really well. I mean, I'm a very, you know me, I'm a really transparent guy. I like to talk about everything in my life, and that's just me, and that's not always a good thing. And so, AD did a good job of not asking me any questions that could get me in real trouble. So, um, he asked really basic questions. Probably the most pointed thing he asked was, did you get confronted by the elders or anything? Did anyone tell you that you're unwelcome? Like saying, hey, this is making us, this is something you're doing that's not making us happy. And I said, no, nothing. And I said, they can't use an excuse that they don't have my contact information because I got a Federal Express letter saying, package
Exactly.
this day. I got an email. I had a chance to also just, in case security heard, I hope some of them are listening. I wanted to just express my personal thanks to those guys. This is nothing personal. And, I really hope they hear it from me that this is not about them. This is about a conflict that I think traces all the way, obviously, to possibly the top leadership tiers at McLean. And so I just had a chance to say, this is who I am. And I've been there for 38 years, on and off. And I'll cover that a little bit. And he said, I'm just going to give you the floor. I said, this is really great, because then I get to just really, how it is sometimes the interviewer can kind of give you kind of gotcha interview and try to embarrass you. He didn't do that. I wouldn't expect that from him. And so I just got to talk about what I saw that concerned me, that I felt I needed to report on. And then some of the things that were just kind of creepy. Just being the feeling of being watched all the time. So I went through the numbers. The congregation got to talk about the numbers and kind of the financials. I did point out toward the end, I said, it's kind of crazy. McLean's bragging about planting 37 to 50 SBC churches. I'm just like, you got to get your own house in order. And it just, and then I did figure out I put together some nice slides, and that was mostly it. But for those who haven't seen it, I'm going to share I'm going to share the graphic that was pretty, it was my satire graph. It's only a minute and 40. I wanted to show it a minute and 40 seconds, but we couldn't show it on AD's because he's not as familiar with how to use StreamYard. I had to kind of teach him how to press all the buttons. And I said that the stream could blow up if we try this. So I'm just going to share this because it probably summarizes everything that we talked about. So let me get it queued up. While I'm getting it queued up, if you have any thoughts, brother.
I was just saying hello to people in the comments section. I see Dapper Dino just came in, my nuke friend, fellow Navy colleague, and in his image, and Fran Marie, Patrick, SNEW. That's somebody I don't know. But hey, welcome, guys. Mr. Jetty and Mr. Bob, or Dr. Bob. Oh, Dr. Bob's here. All right.
Okay, let me try to get this queued up. Hang on, let me.
Boy, I love that song.
Yes. So I'm gonna, Sandy, if you could mute your mic briefly,
Yep.
just so we can get better audio quality, and then we'll let it rip.
That's awesome. Oh my goodness.
Okay, that's the mischievous side. Okay, you know me, I don't like getting in people's faces and screaming. That's kind of how I kind of express when I don't like something, kind of with a little satire there.
Well, sometimes truth is best expressed with humor in it, and this whole thing has just been so unfortunate. As I came to Christ in that church and under Lon, and to see the outflow of persons from unbiblical teaching is that's proof positive people vote with their feet. So just a shame.
I'm just trying to say hi to everyone here, and I'm just gonna randomly click some things. So Dapper Dino's here. Okay, so I need to explain some things to you guys. Normally we talk about really boring stuff. We talk about biochemistry, organic chemistry on this channel. It just happens to be I have more subscribers on this channel, and so it ended up being kind of a convenient way to just kind of announce this. And welcome to all those who came from AD's channel. So I'm just warning you guys up front that some of the shows, if you subscribed, I take no offense if you start seeing them and you're just bored to tears, because most of what happens on this channel is pretty tame. So this is the most drama that I've had recently. I've tried to notoriously be a low drama person, but I'm kind of in the thick of things right now.
Well, tame is a relative word when you guys are speaking about down in the genetic weeds and the biochemistry, biophysics, computational biology fields. For those guys who get really excited about it, this is a very exciting channel. For me, I like to extract whatever you guys have as an end product, the teleological piece of the pie, and that's exciting to me. My hat's off to you, Sal. You've been a stalwart beam of light in this entire melee, if we can put it that way. It's
Thank
just
you.
been,
So before it just occurred to me, sir, let me introduce you to our audience, and perhaps you could talk a little bit about how you came to the Lord, and Sandy's always very modest, but he's like my favorite Navy SEAL, and a little bit of that's rubbed off on me because when I exercise, I just start singing those SEAL songs like "Hey Air Force, low flying Air Force," and Sandy,
Oh my
please
goodness.
talk about what the Lord has done in your life and how that involved McLean Bible. I think people need to hear that. It's a beautiful story.
Yeah, it's I was at a pretty low, we talked about this on the channel, but for those who are just coming in, and I see a lot of new faces. I retired, spent 20 years in the SEAL teams, mostly driving submersibles and doing personnel recovery. But I was at a pretty low point, and I won't get into all the nitty gritty of it, but I was at a very, very low point in my life in 2012. And my son dragged me to church. And there are no coincidences, as I've later learned, in a predicate nature, I suppose. But he dragged me to church, and the first sermon that I heard, and I would have classified myself as perhaps a warm deist at the time. Didn't read scripture, didn't know much about it. I knew there was something, a greater power out there, but it just never occurred to me that it was a personal God. But anyway, we got into church, and Lon Solomon was giving a sermon on Isaiah 36 and 37, which coincides with Kings and Chronicles in those specific passages about Hezekiah's water tunnel, the siege of Jerusalem, basically the siege of Jerusalem with 185,000 soldiers surrounding it, and basically Hezekiah throwing himself on the mercy of the Lord in the temple, and the siege being lifted by an angel coming through. And there are a lot of explanations to that, but the bottom line is that God fomented the eradication of 185,000 soldiers, which is more than the authorized strength of the United States Marine Corps surrounding Jerusalem, along with maybe an army division. But the archaeological evidence is what bit me. The Hezekiah's water tunnel, which we've done, a YouTube video on, as well as the strengthened broad walls, the siege ramps at Lachish, all the archaeological evidence at Lachish, and the things within the archaeological realm which support every biblical story. And so I turned around, I said, wow, I thought this was all just kind of nice stories. And so I started a long journey, which took about a year. And one night in my garage, I gave my life to Christ and changed my life that night. I have never felt anything like that. I actually was on my knees and basically just said, Lord, if you're there, I'm done. I don't know what else to do. And I got the life review right there, and he said, I placed you here, 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 here for these reasons, and now it's time for you to take off. Subsequently, a year later, and Sal loves this story, I picked up the phone and I was going to take my veterans benefits of 36 months that I had from retirement, and I was going to I wanted to fly bush planes. I'd flown, we say fly submersibles, but that's, absolutely underwater, and you're wet, and you're wearing rigs and things like that. And I had actually driven the first dry submersible, the Advanced Seal Delivery System, which was like flying a helicopter underwater. It was just amazing. But anyway, so I wanted to fly bush planes, but the Lord came through and said, nope, you're going to go to seminary. And the first thing out of my mouth was, I don't know anything. And then I got the answer back. And for me, it's just a very warm, very strong feeling that I will be with you. And, 5 years later, now I finished my doctorate in doctorate from Southern, Doctor of Educational Ministry and Applied Apologetics, and the rest is history. And then Sal and I linked up, and one night on a channel, and we've been, and we didn't even know we knew each other, which was fun. So we've been linked up, and I look forward to assisting Sal with the archaeological evidence, but also for you guys who are as Sal would say, these are Sal's words, the nerd and geek out nights, where you're doing the really heady scientific apologetics down into the molecular level. I'm able to extrapolate the meanings out of that so that the layman can understand the impossibility, for example, of abiogenesis and some of the things that I've learned. And I've picked up a lot from your sessions, with you and Emery and even Dapper Dino, and, going back and forth through the arguments has been really enlightening to me. I did pay attention in biology class in prep school, but that was about the last science class I had going through college. So because I took rocks for jocks and everything, but things like that. But it's been very, very enlightening, and Sal's fellowship has been absolutely wonderful, and the fellowship with the channel, everybody on the channel, and I've picked up a lot from that. So I look forward to staying and coming in and guest hosting with you on archaeological things, especially in the moral arguments, because I think those are two of the more underrepresented apologetic themes that we need, especially in the context of Washington, D.C., where we have so many very educated scientists who perhaps staying within their realm will have a presupposition that will lend them to argue against anything for God, even though I will tell you a lot of them do believe in God. It's just that the context of the whole thing will preclude them from expressing any kind of theological knowledge. But archaeology can't be argued with, and neither can most of the moral arguments. You just can't argue with stones. So,
if these remain silent, the stones will cry out.
Stones cry out. Exactly. That's the name of one of my books back here. I don't know.
Yeah. So I just realized I'm talking to a crowd I normally don't. People that are just new to visiting. This channel is organized to talk about evidence and reasons for the Christian faith, and also deal with biblical difficulties. So we've had shows on what I would consider kind of the basic shows, like the problem of evil, why is there pain in the world, and why is God not as obvious to our senses as the air we breathe, in a sense, and we've dealt with that. But then it's like, just simply said, God wants, he's sometimes just hidden enough that if people want to close their eyes to him, they can, but if they want to search out, he's there to be found. So that's kind of the filter. It's God said the kingdom of heaven is like a hidden treasure, and sometimes to develop your faith, you have to find those hidden treasures. You have to be willing to look. And so just the simple act of going to church, and you happen to be, like for Sandy's case, happen to be going to the right place, and there was someone providing evidence, talking about tunnels built in the desert. I mean, that would seem innocuous enough, but it's life-changing. And so we cover that here. For myself, I nearly left the Christian faith 20 years ago. I'm just like, Lord, is this just all a charade? Is this all theater? Is this all Sunday morning theater, and people are just kind of in a collective delusion? And I said, all I have is my scientific training. And I had to crawl back, just going one little piece. I mean, really just, I get strange looks. It's like, well, what do you research? I look for evidences of the Christian faith and cellular biology. I mean, just like, I get, even in the church, it's like I get strange looks. And I said, well, Jesus said, consider the lilies of the valley, how they neither toil nor spin, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin, yet I tell you, Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these. And in Romans it says the the invisible attributes of God are revealed in creation. His eternal power and divine nature are revealed in the things that are made. So there's a testimony there if you're willing to open your eyes and consider it. And that's what we cover in this channel. So I'm so used to having the same crowd here. I'm just realizing, wow, this is great to actually introduce the mission of our channel and what we do. Sandy said he's in seminary. He got his doctorate in ministry education with a specialty in applied apologetics. Was I close?
D.Ed Min, yeah. It's a relatively new field. That I understand that it was only offered a couple of years ago by a lot of seminaries, but Southern was offering it. And here's the most amazing thing, Sal, is first of all, I knew nothing when I started my master's degree at Liberty, and that was in a Master of Religious Education, which was pretty broad. And again, I didn't even know who the Apostle Paul, I didn't know his story. And here I am going into seminary, and it was like I'm getting a brain dump every night. It was, and I was like a sponge. I was just soaking it up. I just loved it. I'd be up till 2 and 3 in the morning, then have to sleep 3 hours and go into work. But it was just absolutely enlightening, and I learned so much in 18 months. And then I just said, the Lord said I was going to take an MDiv, but then He said, nope, you're going to go and you're going to look at a Doctor of Educational Ministry. And I was like, okay, well, where is that? And the first thing I pulled up was Southern, and boom, I applied. I said, there's no way they're going to let some, hammerhead, knuckle dragging frogman in there, and I got accepted. How does that happen? Unless that's God's grace. And the first day that I was there, because you go down for a week, you do intensives, but the rest of the time you're reading and you're writing papers and doing all that, and it's a lot of work. But the first lunch I had, I'm in a lunch room at Southern with 10 other pastors in my cohort, and they're like looking at me like, what are you doing here? Because these guys have been pastors for 30 and 40 years. So I was kind of the odd guy out. There was another guy who was a car salesman, bivocational pastor, who was the only other rather odd duck there. But subsequently, the guy who was one of my readers and advisors on my dissertation said, it's going to be fun to watch you take this and go out into the world with your background. And I said, okay, well, maybe that's why they accepted me. I don't know. I mean, but here we are, and God has equipped. God does not call the equipped; He equips the called. And so here we are, brother.
Well, I wanted to say, I'm glad we can talk about happy things, because it's been kind of heavy. Just easy to just kind of look at like, I could keep reading that my trespass notice, and it's like,
yeah,
kind of unfocused from that.
I think you need to put that up in a frame myself. Yeah.
Alrighty, I think I got an extra frame.
Yeah, I'll tell you a real funny story. We were I was a SEAL teammate in Little Creek, Virginia. It's my first tour at SEAL teammate, and my wife was pregnant, and we went into, and like 8 months pregnant, and we went into a Food Lion right down the street, and she got real, I was grabbing cereal or something off the wall, and she had gone up to get some sliced bread up at the counter, and she had put her foot up because she started to faint. And some dude came up and started yelling at her, how dare you put your foot up there, blah, blah, blah. And, I went up being a little bit of maybe too much of a frog man. I started putting my finger in his face, and well, the guy got my license plate and did all kinds of searches. And the next day I get called into the CO's office. He goes, dude, the old man's looking at me like, hey, knucklehead, what is this? What is this complaint I get to? And I explained the whole thing to him. He goes, yeah, don't worry about it. the guy's a jerk. And but where was I going with that story? But
About the
so
train.
I have that paper. I have that original paper in one of my bag of my all my stuff from the military that you keep all the records, and we go back and I laugh at it every once in a while because it was when uh, the Lynches, when they went in and Mike said he stood up and all the color went out of that
Nick
pastor's
Reed.
face.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, this
sorry.
guy was like, I said, "Hey, dude, you're messing with my wife, and
Oh,
my baby, and there's gonna be
ooh.
some pay here." So, but I never touched him. There's no assault charges or anything. But,
Oh,
but
before we go on to some of the questions here, uh, forgive me, guys, if I don't get to all of them. I just want to talk just one more thing about the Lord's work and the wonderful things. You got some confirmation because of Purple Octopus. I want you to share that with the newcomers here. Um, the Purple Octopus story and Hell Week.
oh my goodness, yeah. I've got that book sitting back here. I can show it to you. But so it was my second when I went to Liberty to do the masters. And if any of you guys are interested in the online studies, whatever the case may be, if at Liberty, if you're taking a business degree, whatever, it's very, very well done. It's probably the best online because they were doing online, long before it became popular. Anyway, so you have 8-week terms, and it's tough. I mean, I took 2 classes, and you're talking about still 14 to 20 page papers, 3 or 4 books, and that's for just one class. And I was taking 2 classes, so you're studying. But one night, it was my second term. I'm reading a book written by Dr. Gary Habermas, who's at Liberty, and Dr. Mike Licona, both of whom are probably the foremost experts on the resurrection. And I'm reading through it, and Gary Habermas is going through and he's investigating the claims about Paul and the apostles having hallucinations, mass hallucinations. He's going through the DSM-4 of the characteristics for hallucinations. And then he said, and getting into the practical side of hallucinations, he traveled out to Coronado, California. Now, if this isn't coincidence or how the way the Lord works, I don't know what is. So I'm reading this, and I said, "Oh man, he went out to Bud's," and I'm reading along, and he said, and one officer, and let me preface this: during Hell Week, which is the 5 days we stay up, and they just are running you to death. You're playing games with the boats on your head and everything else. Right around Thursday night to Friday morning, they can't beat you anymore. You're just too beaten up. Nobody quits after Wednesday. But we were doing what's called the Around the World Paddle, which is you start at the Bud's compound, and then you go around Coronado Island onto the backside. It takes most of the night. And so the guys start hallucinating because you're not in a running state. You're in a, you're still racing, but by that time you're just, smoked. Well, that's when guys start hallucinating, and you can read every SEAL book that's out there because they always talk about hallucinating during Hell Week. But, we had one guy who saw a tiger jump off the top of the Coronado Bridge. We saw one guy who claims there was a locomotive coming straight at us, and he starts screaming, and we're paddling along. But I looked out and I saw what I thought was a purple octopus. Now, let me preface that also. I was a collegiate swimmer, and we had these junk bathing suits that you just wore for practice. And it was a company called Gulbenkian, which had as their little mascot this little purple octopus. And I swear to this day, I saw that thing behind the boat. I just looked behind the boat, and there he is waving at me, the same little moniker waving at me. And I went like this, and I grabbed one of the guys, and I'm like, "Dude, I just saw a purple octopus." He goes, "Sir, shut up and just keep staring." Well, So come to find out, they put us back in the classroom. It's 5 o'clock in the morning before we're going to head off to breakfast, and they have you write an essay. Now this is just the height of hilarity. Everybody is absolutely gassed out of their brains, and you're writing. They give you a pencil and a piece of paper, and they said, "We want you to write a 500-word essay." Yeah, okay. So you start writing, and inevitably everybody's going like this. Because nobody can stay awake. Then they dump ice on you, or you have to go out and hit the surf. Well, I got through. I said, I saw a purple octopus. And then I wrote something else. Well, the master chief of training was standing right behind me. And he and I had gotten hurt, and he kind of took me under his wing. And he was behind me. He grabbed the paper and he busted out laughing. He goes, "A purple octopus? I've never seen a damn," he just started berating me in a funny way, but he held on to that paper. And Gary had come out, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks after that, and the Master Chief had shown him that piece of paper. It ended up in his book. So on page 106 of the book that Habermas and Lacona wrote, on page 106, I'm on there. So I'm reading this, and I literally I was drinking a Coca-Cola, and I almost spit it out all over my screen. And I immediately wrote to Dr. Habermas, since I was a Liberty student. I said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this." And this is, so we have had a cordial back and forth for the last couple of years, and he calls me the purple octopus dude, so, and in fact, I just met a kid in the Cornerstone parking lot who was a Liberty student who worked in the office. And I said, "Hey, I want you to if you see Dr. Habermas next week, tell him the purple octopus dude said hello." So that's been kind of a funny fact and thing. But just think of the coincidence. And here's where the real awards work is. How was it? And I went through Hell Week in '87. Fast forward to 2015, and I am reading something about my own life in a book when I was brought to Christ. How is that? That all those pieces were put together. Now people will call that, well, it's just a coincidence. Look, there are no coincidences, none, zero. And this goes, we can go into a theological rabbit hole with this, but how is that? And then similarly, and we've talked about that, Sal, when I got put into my brand new job right as I was starting seminary at Liberty, I had a brand new job at work. It was an ops job. I was doing continuity of operations, but the Lord sat me, and this is after I told the Lord I don't have any knowledge of anything. Sat me down. Right next to me in the next puka was a guy who's forgotten more of the Bible than I'll ever know. I mean, ardent believer, U.S. Air Force, retired officer, brainiac. He was in the nuclear section and statistics, and one of the ORSA guys. And then the guy who sat right across from me, was a medically retired Apache helicopter pilot who had just finished the same course of study at Liberty I just finished. Really?
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, there's no coincidence.
No
yeah.
coincidence. See, just guys, this is what we talk about on our channel. We learn about how the Lord works in people's lives, and it's evidence for the Christian faith. So that, we cover here, the majority is science type stuff, intelligent design, creation science. I'm a young earth creationist, but I even teach from kind of the old earth viewpoints too, because we can use that model as a starting point. We can talk about fine-tuning of the universe. The next thing is archaeology, but always the favorite topic of everyone is personal testimony, that personal touch and what Jesus does in people's lives. So this is actually great. I didn't, how these streams go, I never know, but just to take we're going to talk a little bit about the autopsy of a deceased church, but there were a couple questions I did see. One of them was from Dapper Dino. He said, "What's the difference between just plain vanilla apologetics and applied apologetics? Is there really a distinction?"
No, I think we delve into different. Well, let me back up. one of the things that we had to talk about when I wrote you have to write a ministry field essay to get into the doctoral program, and one of the first question that was on there is, how do you think apologetics have been applied in the context of the church? And my first answer was, I don't agree with the premise of the question. I don't think apologetics is used, is almost absent in nearly every church in America. I mean, they just don't talk about it. And that's really a shame, because I was really fortunate to have as one of my teachers. We had two teachers that taught two different classes. Was Dr. Timothy Paul Jones, who's probably for literal and textual criticism is one of the smartest guys, and he's probably one of the foremost scholars on the history of the Bible, how it came about. If you've never gotten one of his books, How We Got the Bible, Conspiracy of the Cross, they're excellent. And he was fantastic in class. But one of the things he said in his book is, it's not only important to believe, but it's important to know why you believe. And because the why during times, especially when, and even Dr. Habermas has said, in lectures, he said, especially when his wife passed away and he's left with 4 kids. And he said, the doubts came around again. And the only thing that kept me going was the knowledge of the resurrection, the archaeological evidence, all those things which buttressed his faith. And so that's really important. But moreover, in the context of what we're doing in the Washington, D.C. metro area, where we have so much, I will call it a science-soaked environment, it's really important. And the secularism is so prevalent within every meme of the area of Washington, D.C., which then radiates out not only the rest of the country, but the rest of the world. And so changing those things, especially within the context of Washington, D.C., is real important. But applied apologetics, more pastors need to learn, why do we believe what we believe? Where's the evidence for it? And, if one wants to go with the evidential apologetics, presuppositional, those are nice categories. But each one is, I would say, a tool in the kit bag. Scientific apologetics, archaeology. If I'm talking to a PhD who is absolutely reticent to me because he feels he has more authority on the subject of, I don't know, genetics, for example. Okay, well, I'm not going to talk to you about genetics. Let's talk about morality. Let's talk about where that came from. Let's talk about archaeology. Let's talk about those kinds of things that you've seen in secular history, which demand an answer, like all the atheist societies of the 20th century that killed more people in one century than all other centuries combined. So you can go around that, or, like Sal, you would be absolutely, the person who could take on those arguments in a winsome manner and with respect, and say, look, here's what the evidence that I've studied says. But for, a generalist, for lack of a better word, like me, okay, well, let's go off what your presuppositions are within your field of expertise, and let's go over and look at these other things. So applied apologetics is applying it to the context. It's applying it to the person, because you got to figure out what this person's block is. And so many people will just start by, and it's a great thing you brought up about young earth creationism and old earth creationism, because I think we've talked about this before. One of the things that I've learned, since then is, and although I've come to the young earth side, I was an old earth guy at the beginning, is you will get immediate pushback from most atheists on young. If you say you're young earth right up front, you're going to get the Heisman in the face. I don't want to talk to you. You're nuts, etc. The problem is they don't understand the physics involved in it. 2 Peter 3:8, day is like 1,000 years like a day, which goes into the quantum realm, which is what all the quantum physicists are talking about now, about time compression, which we know has been proven with the Half-Life-Keating experiments in 1971. Man can do time compression. Well, certainly God can. But you don't want to start there. You want to start with the old earth stuff, because that's something that they will understand in their context, especially the fine tuning. So, and then you can bring them along and say, well, have you considered this? After you've, kind of brought them in and had a conversation about the facts, you can say, well, have you considered this? And this is why I am a young earth creationist, because of this, and in the fine tuning, in those things we've talked about. So it's very important that you can argue in both spheres, I suppose. But as I pointed out, in my doctoral dissertation, I went through pieces of scripture that point towards time compression. And there's a couple of pieces of scripture that point towards that. So, and then when you go into the geology and those things that Nephilim Free and those guys talk about, which are very, very interesting, the young earth side can come through. But like Smokey, I know he's a very old in the old earth side, and that's fine. I got that, but there's a lot to be said for the old earth side, because it helps with those different arguments that have no, what do I want to say? Some of the arguments that you find for fine tuning and those things still apply in the young earth side. So anyway, I'll shut up for a second.
Answer to the what is applied apologetics. So there you go,
yeah,
Dapper.
Yeah. But, well, it's the application to scenarios. It's the application to the person. It's the application to the subject at hand. So I suppose maybe applied apologetics is just a fancy term for all that,
But you mentioned something in passing that I need to highlight. This ties to McLean Bible, because you wrote your PhD dissertation on, it was some sort of apologetics plan for McLean Bible Church.
Yeah.
You and I have dedicated a lot to this church in a variety of ways, and our gifts were not used.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's say underutilized.
Yeah.
In the church.
Mine was a doctor of educational ministry, the doctor of ministry and the doctor of educational ministry are professional degrees, whereas the PhD is going out and doing a lot more research based to add to the body of knowledge. The doctor of educational ministry, I had to go out and I had to write up surveys. I had to query groups of people to find out what their apologetics knowledge was, and to see where and when we should apply apologetics into that. Now, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritties of all that, but yeah, I wrote a plan for secular Washington, D.C., and the back of my dissertation, chapters 4 and 5, well, the whole dissertation can be used by any pastor out there. Just go on to ProQuest. I got no, cinches on it. Please use it. It will walk you through all the steps as a pastor at a church that you can start an apologetics program at your church. It has the surveys, it has the stories, it has how you use, which almost killed me, Qualtrics. To do all the mathematics. I praise the Lord that one of my readers was an expert at that, because he got me through that. All the statistics and probability and everything when you get the survey, compiled. But it walks you through all those steps that you can use. So please, you get just it's John A. Pigeon. Nobody calls me that unless I'm in trouble. So I go by Sandy. But you can go on to ProQuest, download that. Please feel free to use it. I got no qualms about it. In fact, that's why I wrote it, was for DC area pastors to take it into their church, use it in their sermons, use it to query their congregants, and say, how much apologetics knowledge do you guys have? As far as evidences for Christ, as far as evidences for all those biblical stories, use it. I'm all about it. That's why I wrote it. And I didn't write it to write a book. Yeah. I didn't write it for any monetary value. I wrote it for the glory of God and to spread that knowledge. So
and this ties again to things happening at McLean. There are these ministries we wanted to start, and A lot of ministries died at McLean. So, and this ties something to about David Platt. So, um, I want to thank Dr. Bob. He asked a question that I never got around to, and I think it's since has since scrolled off the radar, the list here. See if I could retrieve it. He asked something about.
Yeah, while you're doing
Yeah,
that,
okay.
Jamie
He said,
Starfish just said, I grew up in DC area in the late 90s, early thousands under Lon's. Yeah, Lon's the man. And what was done to him was abominable. And I don't know if we want to get into that, but you guys can watch 80s channel. You can watch Sal's videos, and one of the great pastors of our time has been silenced. I'll just leave it at that.
yes, not. Yeah, I didn't mention the non-disclosure agreements,
Yeah.
but Dr. Bob asked his first question. He said, "When do you think the influence of the SBC first arrived under Platt's regime at McLean?" It was before. Answer: It was before David Platt got there. We think, unfortunately, Lon kind of had a friendly, tried to allow partnership. And it
Well,
wasn't
yeah,
yeah.
it was very
2014,
innocuous, and this is how things are slit. You know, the camel's nose under the tent. There's my wife. How'd it go? He said it went great. So, the issue with Lon, the way it was presented to him, is my understanding. It's just a general partnership that is going to help us to spread or church or help to spread with church plants that we wanted to do, which were very, very few. However, that national alliance or partnership, or however you want to pose it in those terms, then turned into an alliance at the state level, both in Maryland and Virginia, since we have campuses in both. And I think that's part of the reason that Lon has been silenced, is because they did not pose it to him as such, and he did not really realize that was going to be to turn us into a Southern Baptist Convention church. And we were turned into one, no matter what any of those guys say. And now the issue is, and I think AD pointed this out on his channel, is, okay, well, we say you guys want to keep claiming we're not an SBC church. Why did you just put out a disclaimer that we're going to disassociate ourselves with the Southern Baptist Convention? And why were we giving money to the Southern Baptist Convention if we weren't a member of it? Why is it that every time you Googled McLean Bible Church from that point on, 2016 on, that we came up as a Southern Baptist Convention church? So this was all done in a very incremental and deceptive way to do this. And why are we pulling in all these pastors from the Southern Baptist Convention? Why did we pull in David Platt, Joe Carter, Scott Logsdon, all these guys who were Southern Baptist Convention guys? If we're not a Southern Baptist, I mean, please, if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Grow up. We're not stupid. So
we don't want to say there's nothing inherently wrong with affiliating unless it's a violation of your constitution. So I've attended an SBC church, but
well, we certainly don't want to be affiliated with guys like J.D. Greer and Ed Linton and all the rest of the continuous clown car that's now the woke part of the Southern Baptist Convention. So
yes. So just to clarify, the timeline would be around 2015, 2016. So that's when, and then David Platt came 2017, and that's represented by the red line here. So it only took 4 years to go from about there all the way down here, but it kind of began a little bit here with Dale Sutherland in 2015. And so in the animated graph, you could actually see that. And they said, what Dr. Bob asked, was it always corrosive? No, actually the first year, there were some really great sermons by David Platt. It's the things that happen behind the scenes, like the destruction of the ministries. It's like I talked about the skateboard ministries. I mean, it seems innocuous enough, but when you start, like then the single moms ministry, um, the paintball ministry, the
Clothing
clothing.
ministry.
Oh my goodness, clothing.
Yeah, which for those in the audience, McLean Bible Church was famous in the area. We have a clothing ministry. If you guys went down there, some department stores would be envious of how many clothes we have down there and the size of it. It's just insanely large. And there are the most dedicated ladies who run that thing down there. So, pardon me, my dog's barking. I'll go on mute here for a second. There he goes. He's off. But Sal and I were trying to at once start a really good aggressive apologetics ministry, and we were told, "Hey, we found somebody else." Well, that somebody else happened to not have any seminary, didn't have an apologetics degree, had no education or training experience, and they picked him for a lot of reasons, which I don't want to get into. But the ministerial leadership, what's left of it, was all handpicked by David Platt, and the elders have been complicit in it, and that's really what the big shame is. And your elders have got to run the church, not the pastor. Pastor sets the spiritual tone, but the elders are the ones who have a check on the theology. They have a check on all the ministries. They have a check on all the finances, etc. So, and that has been basically co-opted by the pastoral staff now.
So what is there was a brief question, because I really respect Dapper Donahue. He said, "Do you think Sandy would be the best to convince me of a young Earth?" No, I'm the best, man. You elected me.
Yeah, exactly. You guys elected him, hey. but see, the thing of it, if I could just, I know that was kind of a tongue-in-cheek question, but the thing of it is, it should, young Earth, old Earth, especially amongst Christians, even amongst when we're talking to people who are agnostics and atheists, should not be the crux of the issue. The crux of the issue must be Jesus Christ, period. End of story. Because, we can go all around the mulberry bush on the word yom and how it is translated in the Bible in the Old Hebrew, etc. We can go all the way around the mulberry bush on science. But Christ, him crucified, him risen, is indisputable. And that's really what has to be the focus of main effort.
Amen. Amen. So, kind of going back to, and we're going to tie this now to kind of really the main topic, which is autopsy of a dead church, or diagnosis of a dead church. Depending on who you ask, they'll give a different reason why they're dissatisfied with McLean. So if we see this huge attendance drop here, if we could somehow just find out and ask the people, why'd you leave? If they were disgruntled. Some people leave for, other reasons like travel or assignment out of the area or whatever. But if you took the people that left because they were dissatisfied, you'd get a different answer. I could tell you that a lot of people the ministry was just kind of the decimation of the ministries was one of the things. I get that. The thing about the SBC affiliation, some of the older crowd, that was really precious to them. That really didn't do anything for me, honestly, because I was like, oh, we're going to affiliate with a bigger denomination. We're going to be a happier family. I didn't really understand all the details. So that didn't affect me. But there were a lot of people that were upset with, and I'm showing the picture here of Mike Kelsey, because he represents kind of the infiltration of the social justice, racial justice thing, and the Black Lives Matter. But I mean, David Platt is on board with that too. But maybe to symbolize what happened when Governor Northam here in Virginia was saying, well, abortion clinics and liquor stores are essential services, but not churches. The churches that stood up, and there's one here at Occoquan Bible, the church I
Yeah,
was a being
and
member of.
Cornerstone Chapel in Leesburg.
Yep. They said, you know what? The elders here were competing to see who's going to get arrested. They said, okay, which one of us is going to go to jail? And they're fighting to be the one. Okay. Guess they're more eager to start a prison ministry than me. Okay.
See, Sal, that's why you got to frame that trespassing order. I'm telling you.
I mean, God bless them. And the Christian community saw that. In contrast, David Platt and his church, they shut down and say, we got to protect people from disease. But then they encouraged their own congregation on a Sunday to go out to a Black Lives Matter related type protest, where there's also risk of exposure. It sent a message. It said, this is where your priorities are. And I think personally, that's when the drop began. That definitely did it for me. I was just like fed up. I said,
it was
about all the looting and burning and torching.
Yeah, it was between March and May, and that infamous sermon that was given on 17 May 2020, which anybody can go online and view, which we call the Dueling Pastors video, where David Platt dressed up in all black and Mike Kelsey in all white, and they proceeded basically to berate the church that we weren't welcoming. Now, keep in mind that McLean Bible Church sits in Washington, D.C. We are the home and have been the home to foreign dignitaries. I had the King of Tonga in there one day I was chatting with a couple of years ago. We had, everybody from every walk of life, senators, congressmen, heads, cabinet members. The Surgeon General from the Trump administration was, Jerome Adams was there. Good and we talked off. We had so many of those people in there. We had 106 different nations. Who knows how many ethnicities, if one wants to cater to that term. I don't. I think, everyone's human, period. Anyway, so we were probably one of the most diverse, if one, again, wants to subscribe to that term. I don't. I think it's a very divisive term, but given that's the context from which all the CRT guys argue, 106 nations. That's pretty wide, I would say, in the cultural paradigm, from around the world. But he proceeded to berate us and tell us that we weren't welcoming. Are you out of your mind? Well, then why did the numbers keep climbing and climbing and climbing, until he showed up and started, running a soup cooler about that kind of stuff. So, and that's why everybody left. Everybody voted with their feet. I'm not going to put up with this racial nonsense. And, and I, as the, for lack of a better word, his, personal protective detail, saying that I would think twice about, and he didn't say this, but it was implied that, I'd take a bullet for anybody for any pastor in there or any congregant in there should the, on the unfortunate occasion arise, and it really ripped up not only all the ministries and everybody in there, but, this is why everybody left. People are not stupid. They know what's going on. Now, they may not speak up about it, but okay. Sorry, my wife's outside with the neighbor. So the issue is it was that sermon that kicked everything off. That was that sermon that was the prelude to a group of elders in our elder pool. One of them had been an elder. He was back in the pool. He had moved away, come back, and wanted to be an elder again. That wrote a 17-page letter that was theologically driven to say why critical race theory, intersectionality, all the rest of it was unbiblical. And it was basically the elders arranged the meeting with Platt, but basically it was rejected. Secondly, then on the December 9th, I think you remember this, the December 9th, 2020 congregational meeting, and I was sitting down front. I was still a member of the security team and still a member there, hoping that things were going to change, hoping everybody thinks that they can have some kind of an influence, but I didn't realize how intransient this philosophy was, and that's what it was. It was being inculcated into these pastors, or was inculcated into these pastors. But somebody stood up and said, why are you supporting Black Lives Matter? Why are you teaching critical race theory? And at this time, they were teaching that gospel justice, the church, and race nonsense in formal training to congregants. And so a number of people stood up, and Platt looked at him right in the face and said, I don't support Black Lives Matter, nor do we teach critical race theory, and neither do any of my pastors, which then I literally guffawed. I'm in the front, and I don't know if he looked around. I just busted up laughing. I said, you got to be kidding me, dude. So that took from there. They took, the elders went back again. They did Facebook scrapes of all the pastors. They found all of their tweets, all of their text messages. They gave that to the elders. The elders didn't even have a meeting. They wrote these guys back a letter and said, you guys are too theologically off on this. We're done. Really? So that's where this whole thing came. And then, March 2021, people were asking questions about finances in the church. And I don't want to get into that right now because there's legalities involved in it, but there's some, shall we say, interesting bookkeeping going on.
Yes, and I pointed that out. I pointed it out only from the official congregational reports.
Right.
I said, when accountants looked, I said, okay, guys, this bothers me. That's all I said, you can take it just from their own published reports. And I said, this bothers me, and that's why I did what I was doing. I wanted to point out a picture here. This is my family at my sister Elizabeth's wedding. And I did share this on AD Robles' channel. This is my sister Elizabeth. She's my elder sister. That's my sister Veronica. And Sandy.
Veronica, man, she's the one who's tough as nails, man. She'll hit you with a baseball bat between
yeah, she's tough as nails. See, all those genes, all those alleles went to her for the eugenics type. The toughest nails, all the kind of I'm like the perpetual teenage girl. It's like, I think we need to switch because she has a lot of the masculine traits I don't. But anyway, so Elizabeth's first husband passed away and she got remarried to my brother-in-law, Charles. His wife passed away.
Yeah.
You can see he's African-American.
Yeah,
and Sandy met him too.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's a funny guy, man. He was was it 101st Airborne or 100?
Yeah, Screaming Eagle.
173rd Airborne. Yeah,
in the
tough
Korean
dude.
War. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so here is Mohammed. He's from Iran. He's Persian. My cousin is half Chinese. These are my half Chinese cousins here. Veronica's husband is Swedish, so white. He's white. He's very ill, so that's why he couldn't be there. There's my dear mother. She's in her wheelchair coming out to my sister's wedding. This is 2012.
God bless her.
Yeah, in August, and you could see these are my cousins. I'm just pointing this out. It's like, yeah, Black lives do matter. Absolutely, my brother-in-law. But what they ended up doing in church, and Mike Kelsey is saying, well, we're not making everyone feel welcome. I said, well, brother, you could, do you realize the way that you conducted, the way you and David Platt, especially, the way you conducted that sermon in your Sunday school, you made a lot of the white people feel very unwelcome in the church.
Yeah, and it goes to an arrogance also, and Vodi Bakum has talked about this called ethnic Gnosticism, and it's this special knowledge. And I've run into this in the commercial world now. They're trying to push these unconscious bias classes on us, And I basically told the HR guys, I'm not taking this nonsense. And if anybody would like to challenge me on it, I'd be happy to, come into the HR office and tell you why you should not be pushing this on the rest of the company personnel. Pardon me. But that somehow these social scientists have some kind of special knowledge, or that the rest of us don't have, that we just don't know about, and it's very condescending, to say the least. And so it's that kind of arrogance and condescension that was pushed, that you people, need to learn that you have a problem. You just don't know it. Well, seriously, dude, I mean, come on, grow up. And Platt has said, I, as a white pastor, need to learn more. I'm part of the problem. Well, how are you part of the problem? That just doesn't make any sense to me. So anyway, Vodi Bachum's book Fault Lines is very, very good if anybody wants to learn more about it, and the roots of this in Hegelian dialectic, back in the early 1800s, that formed itself. Marx failed to get any kind of a socialist movement in England during the Industrial Revolution. Why? He was foiled by Charles Spurgeon, foiled by the Word of God. Now, Gramsci in the early 1900s took that theory, and seeing that the economic argument was not going to work, moved it into a cultural argument, and that's why we call it Gramscian and Fabian socialism, is attacking the culture and attacking the history and attacking the norms and attacking the family unit, and that's where all of this stuff comes from. And this piece that pastors have fallen prey to is now as I call it, the nibbling around the edges of the American cookie, the American fabric. This is, because if you read Cleon Skousen's book, The Naked Communist, he has 45 communist goals for America. And this is one of them, is getting rid of the church, or co-opting the religion of the church to be that of the state, which is what Hitler did effectively with the Lutheran Church. Dietrich Bonhoeffer paid for it with his life in opposing that. So anyway, this is where all this is coming from, and it's saddening to see. It's very sad.
So we're an hour and 8 minutes, and we haven't gotten to our main topic, which is still okay, because this is how conversations go. We go down, we start to talk about really interesting stuff, and it was just great to hear your testimony. And then, because people did come from 80's channel, and they're hearing about McLean, we've gotten to talk about it. This is kind of an interesting quote from last week. Was Larry Cooper. You have the picture there. He said at our quote-unquote quasi-congregational meeting, I hope that you're as energized and excited as I am about where we are and where we are headed. I'm just like, Comrade Chairman Cooper, this, I don't know.
Yeah. I've known Larry now for a long time because, of the relationship I had from the security team to the elders, and Larry's a friend, but I don't know where or why he has gone this route. I'm still perplexed about it. And, I've gone shooting with a guy, I've had meals, it's just very saddening to me to see this. And we've tried ad nauseum to explain things. And anyway.
Now, before we go to our main topic, I did manage to do this with on AD's channel, and for some of those who missed it, and Larry said this our elder board, consisting of Larry, Dave, Mike, etc., the people pictured there plus some more. He said this is the high point. This is like the high point elder board. And I'm like, okay, this is Sal satire playing in. I said, I guess it just depends on your perspective. I think if you look at the world kind of upside down, you could say this is a high point.
Yeah.
Okay, so
love is peace, freedom is slavery. Got it. Okay.
I kind of said this is kind of the little rascals here. They could be a good elder board. Just a random thought. And I pointed out that, let me see if I was pointing out, I'm just updating you. 'Cause Sandy had had lunch with his family, and so he missed.
Holy guacamole.
That's the Arlington campus,
Yeah.
and um, if you're
No,
wondering why I
that's
have the
Tyson's.
Arlington at Tyson's.
Oh, Arlington. Pardon me. Yeah. For those who don't know, our Arlington campus is being refurbished at the tune of millions of dollars.
For
Um,
120 people.
yeah. Uh,
So, um, so say, I mean, most of what I'd say. I'm just going to review this a little bit for
yeah. Go ahead.
Sandy's sake. And so now the reason I put this squares there is partly to protect identities, privacy, just a little privacy, especially in God's house. I don't want people to be a spectacle. And the color coding helps me to count with the photographs, get a very exact count. Every group of 10 individuals has their unique color. So you get a very precise count that way. And this was September 19th, 120 in Arlington. They only had one service, Arlington at Tyson's. 90 at the 11 a.m. service at Prince William, before all the seats would be packed. And people have been shocked what has happened. And that was the 11 a.m. I'm sorry. The 9 a.m. ironically had more, 176. But we tallied this up. I'm just like, my personal count was about 2,900. I said, since I'm not there simultaneously on all 5 campuses, I said, I might have missed some just because I'm not there all the time. So, I just put it up to 3,200. I said, these are terrible numbers. How can we sustain our revenues? Because they're reporting year over year revenues are the same. And I just said, okay, this would mean if we've had a 80% loss, carnage in our congregation, individual members, or individual members giving 5 times as much, because that's what they'd have to do. Are they enthusiastic? I said, okay, so this means if everything's still on the up and up and the books are clean, there must be a big donor. Why would he be donating to a congregation that is dying? I said, these are reasonable questions. Why aren't we hearing it? I just left it at that. Although I have to admit, earlier in the week, I was like, am I going to be getting a visit from Guido, the mob enforcer, for pointing this out? And I said, you know what? I began to feel less worried. I said, the one who might, if there is I doubt there's something criminal at this point. Okay, just want to point that out. But I said, if Guido, the mob enforcer, is going to visit someone, it's not going to be me. There's probably some other people that are higher in the, in the food chain that are going to get a visit first. So then there was just something really funny, and I said, how can I kind of communicate this? This is a picture of, this is September 19th, and you have a picture here, a sign that says overflow seating. And I'm like, are you guys delusional? I mean, there's no way we're going to be an overflow. Apparently they were thinking they're going to have some big event. And I'm just like, no, your sanctuary's just perennially just half empty, while other churches are just exploding. What's the deal?
Yeah, you should point out, Sal, that's the Smith Chapel, which holds 1,000 people.
Wow.
Our main sanctuary holds 2,700 people, and for them to say that this is overflow seating is, I would say, at the height of optimism, but probably bordering into hilarity. So
yeah. And so let me just explain. So Sandy did a good job. So we have this Smith Center that seats about 1,000.
yeah,
and then the main sanctuary. This is not to scale. What, 2,300, 2,700?
2,700.
Wow.
Which would be packed, absolutely packed. When Lon was there, we would have at the 11 o'clock, because everybody likes coming to 11 o'clock. The Smith Chapel would be full, as well as the main sanctuary, and sometimes we would have to put people in the prayer rooms and some other places that we have televised. The service would be televised, and so you just can't fathom the numbers that are being reported now just do not parallel anything close. You could put all of the services together now, and they've come down from what, 2 services, Sal? I mean, they only do a
5.
9 and an 11 now, and then they do that special Arlington one at 5. But you could put all 3 of those services together, and you wouldn't even fill half the sanctuary, with the main sanctuary. I mean,
You'd be
that's where
about
we are.
50% capacity with all that.
Yeah.
But the point is, this is what's kind of the insanity. And that's why I found this little meme, this little boy looking skeptical. So what they did this day, and this is kind of mean to do to the Spanish-speaking people that were coming in, expecting to go to church to hear their service in Spanish. And that was at the Smith Center. So this is kind of like a floor map that I drew. Okay, it's not to scale. So we had these overflow signs directing them to the Smith Center, and then also the cafeteria on the 2nd floor. The Smith Center is on the 1st floor. And they told the Spanish pastor there, you have to shut down the Smith Center because this sanctuary is going to overflow, and we need people to go. We need overflow because it's going to overflow here, and it's going to spill into this area. So what they did is they said, okay, we're going to close it off. You're going to have to take all these Spanish-speaking people and send them to the English service because the English service is packed. So there's the little boy being skeptical. He said, the Spanish-speaking people have to go to the English. So the Spanish-speaking people have to go to the English-speaking sanctuary because the English-speaking sanctuary is already full when it's actually half empty. And I'm like, this is kind of, I don't know how to describe this. This is kind of like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest kind of logic. I mean, this is nutty. And AD picked right up on this. He said, it looks like they're trying to just come up with an excuse to move the Spanish service into the English sanctuary because they're looking really empty. And they don't want that to become they had this, for those who don't know, they had this big launch at September 12th. And earlier this summer, I said September 12th is going to be doomsday because they're going to try to restart, but they're going to destroy a lot of ministries. We knew that a lot of ministries are going to be removed from the ministry directory. Let's see if I have it here. They're going to be removed. And they said, they're excited about the restart. They're going to have all these people, and people are going to be crowding in, and it didn't happen. And in fact, the opposite happened. And I think they're a little embarrassed that they have to put some windows there. Okay. So I guess, I can only speculate that I probably didn't endear myself to the powers that be because I had that video. Can I play it one more time before we get to our main topic?
It's your show, brother.
Okay, so I released this on September 30th, and then so that was a Thursday. I released a different version, but this has most of it. By Sunday, I was trespassed out of the church. I don't know that this caused anything. I think it could have been related. Okay, guys, I've got a really twisted sense of humor. All right,
Yeah,
so
yeah. Hey, you know what just went through my head, Sal? Have you seen the movie, The Time Machine, the older version?
oh yeah,
Okay, you remember when the Morlocks are trying to get the Eloi to come into the base so they can eat him, and they put the sirens up?
oh yeah, oh I can't believe you remember that.
Yeah, so it would seem to me that the rest of the people who are now attending, well, they might be a little kind of like that. So
I'm sorry to say it. Oh yeah, it's kind of disturbing actually. I mean, they're just enamored. Oh, and that reminded me, I wanted to say, you see, the thing is, the importance about apologetics is a lot of people can be really, a lot of their faith can be driven by just the charisma of one person.
absolutely,
And
yeah. Witness the Joel Osteens of the world, the Kenneth Copelands, Robert Morris, uh, you know, uh, Matt Chandler. I mean, AD can go down the list better than I can, and so can JD Hall. So, but yeah, it's driven by charisma and wanting to have their ears tickled, which
yeah,
those guys do very effectively.
they do it. And you see, I realize it's not in, the idea of using facts is not necessarily in certain people's business model. That's why we have perennially not been able, apologetics ministries, to stand up in certain churches. Good question. Why doesn't Lon chime in and all of it?
Tropical Cabbage. Now that sounds like a good name for a punk rock band. You know, why doesn't Lon chime in all this? Lon is under a non-disclosure agreement, and we will leave it at that.
Yeah, non-disclosure, non-disparagement. So, and not just him, a lot of people who
Yeah,
are,
this is a typical tactic. And if one goes to, and I know AD and the rest of the guys know about this, if you guys go to Enemies Within the Church, the story of the First Baptist Church of Naples, the same thing that happened to their pastor down there happened to our pastor, has happened to the First Baptist Church of Fort Lauderdale, happened to the Crossroads Church in Lexington, Kentucky, when they merged with the Crossroads Church in Cincinnati, Ohio. And there is a common denominator in all of this, and we know who he is, and he knows that we know who he is. But the non-disclosure agreement, if you go and you see on John Harris's channel the interview with Russell Fuller, who was an Old Testament professor and Hebrew scholar at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, who was this, and I didn't know any of this was going on when I was a student there. Pardon me, I found this out after the fact. But he goes through and he said non-disclosure agreements have come down from the Southern Baptist Convention, have been put into these areas where they're firing guys who are not going along and not towing the line on critical race theory, intersectionality, etc. All these liberal theologies that are being interposed into the seminaries, but into the Southern Baptist Convention. Every one of these guys has had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Russell Fuller was the only one who refused. And well, actually, I think there were two other gentlemen who did too, but Russell Fuller was the only one who came out, stalwartly, and said, "I'm not signing this," and they're going to find out everything. And he lost his pension, his severance pay. He lost a lot of things. He's doing fine now, praise the Lord, because he stood up for the truth. But this non-disclosure agreement business, it seems to be a hallmark tactic of these woke guys from the Southern Baptist Convention, permeating down through the seminaries now. And it happened to our pastor as well. And so he has not been able to say anything. Hayes Wickham, who was the guy at First Baptist Church in Naples, still hasn't been allowed. And did they disparage that guy. And everything was false. They made things up. So yeah, there's a Gramscian socialist cultural Marxism, which there's, if you take the pure form of Marxism anyway, but that whole tactical theme of how Marxist operates, it's going on right now. And all those guys, John Harris has talked about it, Vody's talked about it. So it's nothing new to those of us who have been watching this progress during the past couple of years. But we're witnessing it in our church right now, and especially the types of the standard for lack of a better, kind of militarizing this term, but standard operating procedures that we've seen, the tactics, techniques, and procedures in every of one of these churches. It's all the same, and it's kind of, I keep saying it's kind of amateur hour. Because if you read Saul Alinsky's Rule for Radicals, you know exactly what their next move is going to be. And that's one of the things we were talking about last night, Sal. Was we can anticipate everything this one guy's going to do. So
wow. So actually, we've talked about all the problems in McLean, and I've been dying for like the last few months because we had one show and you used one phrase, and I got to follow up with Sandy on this. And you said, like, in your studies, there was something called, it was required study, was the autopsy of a dead, deceased church. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. Let me see if I can pull that book up. It's not very big. Hold on. It's in my picture. And I thank the audience for my veterans benefits and paying for this library back here. So hold on a second. Let me pull it up.
So Gene, it's great to see you. It's great to see a lot of people that I haven't seen in a while, and then all the new people. And great to see you, Gene.
All right, there it is.
Who's it by? Thom Rainer?
Thom Rainer.
Okay, so what do you think of that book? Did you agree with everything? Or?
It goes into a lot of, my church has the symptoms of sickness, the 4 responses. It has all of these kinds of things, especially when one is foisting political. It's one thing to talk in, political themes when you're talking about biblical themes in there, but when it starts to splinter the church, it needs to be slow erosion. Boom. The budget moved inwardly. Geez, when have we really had the last time the elders have talked about that? The Great Commission becomes the Great Omission. Now, I will say that has not, with Platt, with all due respect, being an honest broker here, he pushes that all the time. But that's part of the problem, is that's not what this church was meant for. This church was planted specifically to effect change in Washington, D.C., to be a beacon of light and to spread it to members of Congress, cabinet members, all those people that I've already talked about, transient people, especially in Washington, that will end up going back to their own countries or to their different parts of the United States to be beacons of light to those people. Now, one could say, well, is that not spreading the gospel? In a sense, it is, but it has to start here. What's changed is they've made overseas mission work a priority. Now, one can argue, what about all the church planting? Well, church plants are nice. Church plants, first of all, fail highly in many cases. Number 2, they're very expensive, especially in Washington, D.C., because these pastors have to be housed somewhere. So what is your best bang for the buck? It's not church planting. It's not sending these guys overseas. It's affecting the people who are influencers of the entire world right here in Washington, D.C. So,
so I was just dying to talk to you. I've never read that book. And
yeah, it's real short. Look at this. It's that thick. It's like next to nothing. But he covers it in a very, let's see, how many pages this thing? And I haven't read this in 6 years. It's only 100 pages. Yeah, it's nothing. So, boom.
Okay, so some people did ask me about, they did mention my books, and I'm just going to point out something humorous here. As you know, I got, scientific publication. And this is a total aside, guys, and we'll get back to our main topic.
We're always getting back to the main topic, Sal. What's up with that?
Because I keep getting off topic.
Oh my goodness, that's all right.
But well, kind of what the next question is going to be. How would our church, McLean, fit? But before we get there, I just wanted to say, guys, my publication is in this book, Handbook of Mathematics. It's on science and it's creationist friendly. What we wrote, it's not totally pure creationism. We are critical of Darwinian evolution. And it's the Handbook of Mathematical Sciences. It retails for $1,500. You can get a copy of it at Walmart for $819. But don't do that. You can see some of my videos on this. You can get a
Sal. What are you using? Gold leaf?
It's 1,500 pages long.
Oh, you said it cost $1,500. I'm like, what?
It does. Look right here. You see, the print and ebook is it's $1,499.99.
Holy guacamole!
But I don't, just for the record, I don't get a dime. I don't get a dime. The authors don't. So that was just an aside. I just want to tell you guys, some of my science talks could really scare you. They're brutal. They're not fun like today. So back to the topic. Sandy, what's your diagnosis for McLean Bible, kind of given the parameters laid out in that book of, is McLean a dying church at this point?
No, it absolutely is. And we have a different, there's some things in this book that may not apply so much to the paradigm of the, what do I want to say, the sickness going on, or the decline going on. As I just said, we have a different reason for this church. There's a lot of churches that are planted so that they develop missionaries and do those things. And nobody's saying that, planting churches is a good thing. Sending missionaries is a good thing. We have a very robust, and I applaud Platt for Ethiopia. When the president of Ethiopia comes over to your orphanage in Ethiopia and applauds you, and you get a presidential citation, whatever it was, hey, I'm all about that. But the issue is not to then use the funding of the church and neglect the congregants with respect to mission to their needs as well. You have to let them minister. You have to let them participate in the work of Christ in the confines of Washington, D.C. That's how you affect change. And consequently, you have a more multiplicative effect of sending people or spreading the gospel, which is really, the focus of main effort, by ministering to a church like McLean's. It's got to, but the ministries are gone. And that's why a lot of people said, I can't serve here. The only thing I'm allowed to do is go overseas. Well, I can't go overseas. I'm still a tent maker here. Okay, well, the Apostle Paul knew that. I don't understand why, then you're going to demand people go overseas. If you can go overseas, great, wonderful. I'm all about it. I've done plenty of tours overseas, but the point is that's not the focus of main effort for this church. And
not to mention.
And like Rainier in here says, the Great Commission was the Great Omission. It's kind of the opposite of us. There's nothing but the Great Commission, but outside or oconus, and of this country. The sickness is here in D.C. We got to take care of D.C. first. And anybody who doesn't understand that, you don't even read the news. You haven't read the news. We got big problems here. Guys, we're at a precipice in and then I will tell you, the only thing that keeps me going is if it all goes to crap, I still got Jesus. And
Amen.
literally, that is the only thing that keeps me going. I can
Amen.
look at the cross and I say, this is all transient. If you look back at the Old Testament, this happened up and down, up and down, up and down. But then again, I take a step back, and being a student of history, specializing in special warfare history, and I look at what the founding fathers went through and why they set up the government the way they set it up. And even Thomas Jefferson and Franklin and Madison, who were all deists. Well, Jefferson was a little bit more than a deist, but I don't want to, we'll get down a rabbit hole on that. Every one of them said that the divine hand of God was upon this nation. Now, that may upset some purists. It's not in the Bible. I get it. I'm not here to debate it. I'm telling you what those men felt, and and if you look at the miracles that happened during some of the battles in the Revolutionary War, there's no question that some very interesting coincidences happened. Just study the Battle of Cowpens, which the movie The Patriot. The movie The Patriot is a conglomeration of about 7 stories into one. Francis marrying the Swamp Fox, and Tavington was actually Tarrington. He was a cavalry officer who was very brutal. But anyway, the Battle of Cowpens, these guys, Cornwallis was so upset that he lost that battle on the field, which is depicted in that movie, that all the militia and all the Continental Army started fleeing to the north after they had just whipped these guys. Cornwallis made all of his troops burn everything, all their provisions. He was so incensed that he chased after these guys on foot, forced march. And every time they got to a river, the river would suddenly swell up as soon as the Continental Army and the militia got across. Now, that didn't happen just once. That happened twice. Mm-hmm. And they chased them all the way to Yorktown. And that's where, they ended up getting hammered. But there are several instances like that in the Revolutionary War. And George Washington, over and over, if you read the Maxims of Washington, if you read any of his historical writings, he said the divine hand of providence was upon us, because there was no way, after 7 years of getting they got their butts handed to them several times. They should have never won that war. But after 7 years, isn't that interesting? That's when everything turned.
And see, that's the move of God. It's not the charisma of the pastor. And that, some people, I'm only beginning to just fathom this. There could be more Christians in China now than there are in the United States.
I would not disagree with that statement.
And I'm just like, to your point about just look at DC, who really needs the missionaries? And our mutual friend Emery, in his image, Emery Moyna, he said there have been some articles where the Christian churches in these other countries are saying, stop sending these American missionaries. They're corrupt.
Yeah.
We don't want
absolutely.
them.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so why are we sending all these guys there when we need them here? Not the corrupt ones, but we need to minister to everybody here. This is where the sickness is, not out there. Exactly. And here's another where I give Platt kudos is what he's done in China. Big kudos, man. I mean, that's some big brass ones, man. I'll tell you what some of the things that he's done. But wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's just the way it is, and that's not why this church is here. So,
and I just like, guys, do you see what's happening in your congregation? You're talking about winning souls. You see what's happening to our own house here. It's like here at McLean, you're losing so many people. Are you filling the church with new converts? Because I was there on September 19th. They had these quick conversion kits near the communion table. There weren't a lot of takers. You're just kind of preaching to the choir, not a lot of takers. And they're trying to get people to get baptized, and which is unfortunate. I think there's a little bit of theater they're trying to generate, unfortunately. And I'm just like, guys, if you can't straighten out your own home, why are you planting churches in the image of McLean? in the name of SBC, but the image of McLean. 37 to 50. I'm just like, guys, you can't even.
Yeah, but and also the cost of these churches in DC Metro. I mean, people don't understand how expensive it is, especially in Washington DC proper. You know, you're talking about the kinds of housing that will almost equal a studio apartment in New York City, which can be like, you know, $3,000 a month. So you're spending an enormous amount of money in a church plant that may or may not succeed. I mean, they many times don't succeed. Anyway, hey, Nicholas says, "Hey, Nicholas, how you doing, brother? Good to see you again." They need to send us missionaries then. You know what? And that's not a bad idea. I've seen there's a girl who escaped from North Korea who lives here now, who has a podcast, and she talks about North Korean politics and how we can interpret some of the things that are going on with inside North Korea. If you don't know much about North Korea, there is one book, and I read it when I was I was doing a graduate certificate in strategic intelligence. There's one book called The Aquarians of Pyongyang, and it's written by a North Korean defector, and he grew up from the age of 7 to 14, then finally made it across the Yalu into China, and didn't get caught, and then he made it all his way. And actually, President G.W. Bush actually debriefed him, along with other people debriefed him. But the book it'll shock you, you know, as to what happened, because they were North Koreans living in Japan. They had a casino, they had a bar. I mean, this was a really well-to-do family. And the matriarch, the grandmother, said, we need to go back and support the North. We need to go back and support Kim Il-sung and the revolution. Within 6 months of them getting back to North Korea, they were thrown into the Gulag, to Camps 19. And they lived, the only way they lived was they got 3 handfuls of rice not even rice was a delicacy, 3 handfuls of corn mush every day. That's what they lived on, and it was slave labor. One of the guys said he used his corn to raise rats in the house, and then they would eat the rats. It just absolutely horrendous conditions. But they talked about how they were using the schools to, you know, to fill them with propaganda, and that nobody was allowed to talk. Things that'll just raise your hand. This kid was 7 years old and then he escaped when he was 15 or 16. The Aquariums of Pyongyang. It's unbelievable. But the same kind of thing is permeating. I mean, you see now we have the FBI going to PTA meetings. I mean, seriously, you know, what kind of madness is that?
Yeah.
You know, we have teachers on the school or school board officers that have been elected by the parents, now turning on the parents and turning them in and trying to claim that they're domestic terrorists or they're being threatened. Well, it's because they're not, you know, they forget that they work for us. We don't work for them. Anyway, that same kind of meme is going on within the church now. And, you know, I think everybody who's tuned into this channel is well aware of that, so I won't belabor it. But
so can I show you this? This is Autopsy of a Deceased Church. So this is from Thom Rainer's blog.
yeah,
He said 11 things I've learned. Now, this isn't the listed. I don't know. I'm just going to read it. And he says, I was at their church. I was their church consultant in 2003. The church peak attendance was 750 in 1975. By the time I got there, the attendance had fallen to an average of 83. The large sanctuary seemed to swallow the relatively small crowd on Sunday morning. And we saw some pictures of that.
yeah.
At McLean. The reality was that most of the members did not want me there. They were not about to pay a consultant to tell them what was wrong with their church. Only when a benevolent member offered to foot my entire bill did the congregation grudgingly agree to retain me. I worked with the church for 3 weeks. The problems were obvious. The solutions were difficult. On my last day, the benefactor walked me to my rental car. "What do you think, Thom?" he asked. He could see the uncertainty in my expression, so he clarified, "How long can our church survive?" I paused for a moment and then offered the bad news. "I believe the church will close its doors in 5 years." I was wrong. The church closed just a few weeks ago. Like many dying churches, it held on to life tenaciously. This church lasted 10 years after my terminal diagnosis. This church lasted 10 years after my terminal diagnosis. My friend from the church called to tell me the news. I took no pleasure in discovering that not only was my diagnosis correct, I had mostly gotten right all the signs of the impending death of the church. Together, my friend and I reviewed the past 10 years. I think we were able to piece together a fairly accurate autopsy. Here are the 11 things I learned. So there's a list here. So this may be different than what you have there in your book, Sandy. So do you have any? Can you
Yeah.
describe the book?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you describe your book? Because this
Yeah, it
is
says
from Thomas
Autopsy of
Rainer.
a Deceased Church, 12 Ways to Keep Yours Alive by Thom Rainer. And I'm looking to see and it's Baker and, let's see, B&H Publishing. And when was this published? Goodness gracious. 2014.
Wow. So this is required in your seminary degree?
Yeah, we had a church government. We had a church government. That's why we knew so much about what was going on with the Constitution and constitutional polity, etc. We actually had to take a whole course on different church governments and how they're run. You know, the Baptists versus what Congregationalists do versus what the Methodists do versus what the Presbyterians do, because it's all very, very different in the way it's structured. Or the way they structure their churches, I should say. But ours being based upon a congregational, and I don't mean congregational as in Puritan, I mean congregational as in the congregation are the bosses. They elect the elders. The pastors work for the elders. But it would seem now that the elders are working for the pastors and nobody's working for the congregation.
Yes. So now I don't have the book. Do you recommend it?
Sure. I mean, it's a very, very short read. I mean, if you want to, and it talks about things such as having, quote, programs rather than real ministries. And so, holy cow. Programs rather than these churchy programs rather than real ministries and you know, filled with deacons and people who are very sincere or very passionate about that area with which they're doing, rather than just throwing out these programs which usually end up dying within, you know, 6 months. I remember, you know, Francis Chan had come to the church. Good Lord, it was like back in 2013 or 14. It was 2014, and they threw out that multiply thing, and everybody tried the multiply thing, and nobody was enthused. You know, it died in 6 months. It was just another churchy program. But you look at the ministries that we had going in that church. You know, obviously we've talked about the clothing ministry. Everybody raved about it, and those women were so, and they still are. They are absolutely outraged that it hasn't opened again. And because it was a premier ministry in the area, we brought a lot of people in and got them clothing, you know, from homeless people to people who had just, you know, gained their citizenship, to people who, like veterans that you know, a bunch of kids who didn't have enough clothing to wear, so they go out to a job interview. That ministry helped so many people. We had the apologetics ministry for years. I mean, it needed some tuning to it, but there were people in it. We had you know, Awana and Kids Quest and all those things, and they've just
Turkey Outreach.
disappeared. Turkey Outreach, you know, which was, you know, how many congregationalists were involved in that? I mean, thousands.
Right.
You know, and
So
And the issue was that, well, we're not reaching the people. Well, yeah, you are. What do you think you're doing, dude? Okay, so it may cost a little bit, but what are we doing now? Now, our the rock, which is supposed to be the teenage ministry, is filled with boxes of food, and I don't even want to go there because
Well, I was going to do a talk on our Save McLean on my. Oh, I forgot to start the banner. For those interested in purely the Save McLean, let me start this banner going. See, there's SaveMcLeanBible.org, and I was going to do a show on the rodent and snake invasion of McLean Bible.
oh my goodness,
And
yeah,
I heard some girls talking about it, and I wanted to say, hey guys, I know you don't like David Platt, but please don't refer to him as a snake. And they said, no, we're talking about the real snakes, these physical snakes that have been getting into the church
the
because
church,
it's the maintenance issues.
yeah.
But that was really funny. When I first heard that, I said, ladies, please don't talk about our elders and
Yeah.
pastors that way.
Yeah, and it wasn't just simple rat snakes, man. We're talking some pretty. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. I don't know if we want to go down that road
But
right
the
now.
funny thing was, that's the first thought that came to my mind when they're talking about the snakes in the church. And then,
Yeah, wasn't no snakes in a plane, but
but but but then as I got clarified, they said that's a sign from the Lord. He's kind of has a sense of humor. Said,
yeah, yeah,
but so so one of the signs is kind of the lack of enthusiasm. These kind of ministries that they try to start it and it just dies.
yeah.
And
And the thing of it is with this too, as well, is they've gotten rid of because there are people who are running those ministries who would not toe the pastor's line. They've gotten rid of all the experienced people. Now you've got, young women who are running the women's ministry. What do they know about marriage? What do they know about raising kids? What do they know? You had some very, I'll say experienced, so I don't get myself in trouble here, but in reality, older women that have been raised families that can mentor younger women. They got rid of all those ladies. And I know because some of them were my friends and they were flabbergasted. Yeah, we have disagreements, but with the church, but we want to keep going. We want to keep ministering. No, out. We're going to bring in some younger people, and it's just like every other regime. They bring in young people because they're beholden to the leadership for giving them their position. Look at what Obama did, bringing in all those kids in Birkenstocks. The beginning of his Marie Harf. Marie Harf had no experience at all, and she's helping to run the State Department. She's 28 years old. What are you kidding me?
oh yeah, and like the Kids Quest.
Look at all the knuckleheads they had. Ben Rhodes. What does Ben Rhodes know about national security? Look at this Jake Sullivan guy. They don't know anything about national security. They know what the boss is going to tell them. Now, I mean, we can go down the Biden road here, but they know what those bosses, who was ever running that place, is talking about. So, it's the same modus operandi. Get rid of the experienced people who are going to yell about it. Bring in people who are going to be beholden to you for their jobs. And that's unfortunately the way it goes. It's typical. I mean, these guys think we're stupid. So
if we could go back to the book, and then we'll try to wrap up, and we can continue the conversation. Yeah. By the way, this has been I've had a lot of fun, Sandy. We haven't done this for like 3 months.
I miss this, man. I miss it.
Me too. So, what are some of the other causes? We had
12. Well, he talked about programs. He talked, and forgive me, this is years ago when I took this course, but this was a short read, very short read. The church obsessed over facilities. The church had no clear purpose. The church rarely prayed together. Now, I'll say that, in all, I give credit where credit is due. Mm-hmm. Platt is very big on that, and awesome. God bless him for that. But the church has.
I'm sorry, Sandy, I have to interrupt. I laughed because we did pray together, but then I got a call from you saying, Sal, get out of there.
Yeah, I know. It's hilarious. I know.
Okay,
The
cool.
hypocrisy is just hilarious. Um, but he talks about, the church coming in and and basically a new pastor not coming in and trying to uh, remake, especially if you have a successful church and then you bring a guy in who tries to remake the church in whatever image he thinks or populist memes. He said that will instantly start destroying a church.
Oh my
If we had
goodness.
had, yeah, if we had wanted this, McLean Bible Church to survive, we would have kept with the modus operandi and and
Oh,
and found a pastor who was just wanting to preach the gospel. And one of the things that Rainier brings up in here is that he doesn't, the churches that die, they don't do expository preaching. They bring in all these programs and try to make it into an entertainment business. And recently, John MacArthur just talked about how some of these churches have just become clown shows. I mean, we had what was the show that they had the other day in McLean was the David and Goliath
oh my
play.
goodness.
Oh, come on. I mean, seriously? Okay, great. Run that down in Kids Quest. You ran that for a bunch of educated adults in 2 services, and you don't think somebody's going to say, "What are you doing?" It was the most absurd thing I've ever seen, and no wonder, no wonder MacArthur is called. At the end of time, that it's going to be the church is being run by goats, looking to entertain with clowns. So
Oh my.
stick with the
This,
gospel. If you stick with the gospel, period, add apologetics to it. Hopefully someday we'll get back to that. But if you're teaching the Bible, that's all you need to do. Good expository preaching, and it will come back. But these guys seem to think that they just want to fill, as we say in Washington, with contracting butts and seats. And that's really what some of these pastors want to do, just butts and seats.
um, that sounds just eerily similar to our situation at McLean, where pastor came
Absolutely.
in and he's going to redo everything. I'm just like, dude, I wanted to, Pastor Platt, he said, maybe he didn't say you can leave. He said, maybe McLean Bible isn't the right church for you. And I wanted to say, Pastor Platt, that applies to the pastors too. If you
Yeah.
didn't want to do business the way of the congregation, this is like changing at the end of my talk, by the way I finished my talk with AD Robles, I said, the polite way to diagnose this without moralizing and saying one guy's evil or, I didn't want to degenerate into that. I said, let's look at this from a purely business perspective. This is like a successful restaurant and some new guy comes in, totally changes the menu to things that the customers don't want. And then he's upset the customers don't. He's going to rebuke them for not liking his new menu. I said, this isn't going to work. From a totally business perspective, I said, this is a perfect metaphor for a lot of the things that happen in McLean. I mean, we can go on the theological end and things, but I said, fundamentally, if you didn't want to, if you're going to go there, you should have, and you're going to change the way everything is and try to shake it up. And they're basically, the congregation's donating money here. You better be very careful
Well, remember that
because if they don't like it,
the
they just,
overarching
yeah.
plan by the Southern Baptist Convention, pardon me, was to take over McLean because of its position within Washington, D.C., its proximity to the basically world, for lack of a better word, the area which influences the world the most, with the most influential people who heads of businesses, heads of internet companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and foreign dignitaries. And the issue is that they wanted to pluck this jewel for themselves. Are you going back?
Yes.
Okay, hold on a second, Sal. Here's the boss.
Uh-oh. So guys, if you see me looking here, I'm trying to find this image. We were talking about clown shows. Oh, that was cute. Um,
Sorry,
I want.
I had to kiss the commander in chief goodbye. She's going back to
Oh
that
boy.
voter summit at Cornerstone. They've had a
Oh
couple
wow.
politicians there today, but it's been turning out really well. Um, but but the issue is that McLean Bible Church yeah, look at this. Are you kidding me?
Talking. Um, okay. For those who are wondering what we're trying to show, we talked about a clown show and this was actually Labor Day, where we had that David and Goliath thing, and there was Pastor Platt. He was throwing ping pong balls on stage.
Well, what about the when they put those guys in those bumper suits?
I didn't see that.
Oh my goodness. Go back and look because John MacArthur put it on his blog.
Um, and I'll find another one shortly. So you could talk also about. I'm going to find one more clown show thing. Um, but you were saying that they were. Can you read that? What you just read from Thomas Rainey's book about that led you to your clown show comment?
Oh,
Uh,
it's putting in entertainment,
Entertainment.
and trying to entertain people to draw them in with music and different music and I know that was a big contentious issue that Lon just kind of threw his hands up about, back when it was during the Lon tenure. And they mixed the music up a little bit, but it wasn't anything drastic. But it's to entertain. You come to church thinking that you are being taught the Word of God, and you're nothing but being entertained. So the whole, and it's just butts in seats, and we say that in Washington Beltway bandit parlance, butts in seats, because sometimes that's what it is to fill positions. But if you just go back and preach the Bible, even if your congregation is small, the best way to revive a church is just to get into the Word and do good expository preaching. That's what Rainier says. But these guys they think, no, they need to be entertained. We need to bring people in and give them warm and fuzzies. And yes, you need to have ministry so that people can serve. But there you go. I mean, it's just absurdity. Look at this.
I shouldn't laugh. I mean, there's nothing wrong with entertainment, but it's like that shouldn't be why you ultimately go to church. You want to go there to be in the presence of the Lord. And I'm sorry, that is kind of. I shouldn't laugh. It is kind of.
No, it's clown car. I mean, do you think what do you think Charles Spurgeon would think of this?
Oh my goodness.
What do you think of Billy Graham would think of this? And people have problems with Billy Graham. I get it. It's let's not go there. But I mean, the stalwarts who've been around. What do MacArthur thinks it's just nothing but a clown show. So, and I've got there's things I disagree with John MacArthur on, but he's been a stalwart. I mean, an R.C. Sproul, turning around saying what's wrong with you people, So anyway. We beat that one to death style.
No, this is very compelling. And I got to admit, especially watching David Platt preach, it's great emotional entertainment as well. I mean, he's just very gifted. And when he was preaching, and it was great when he was actually preaching the word really well. I mean, his series on Ruth is like the best I've ever heard.
Yeah, it was very good. But he has since this whole melee started, his preaching is not anywhere near the expository. And I wasn't a big fan of the emotional preaching that he had, but his content was usually very good.
Really
the
good.
problem is now it's terrible. I mean, he stands up there and draws circles around words. There's no Greek, there's no Hebrew, there's no historical context. There's nothing of that. It's just doing basic homiletic. What we learned in homiletics is you diagram scripture and you circle words to look at linkages. but that's homiletics 101. This should not be what, one of the more famous expository or former expository preachers used to do. It's terrible. I watched Mike Kelsey's sermon last Sunday. It was very good. I thought, and it seemed like it was the old Mike Kelsey, and I don't know. It's
Thank
the
God
whole
for
thing.
that.
Just I mean,
Mike delivered the best sermon that I ever heard from him that day when his parents intercepted me.
Sure. No, look, hey, there is no question that Mike knows how to do good expository. I take nothing away from him. And I used to like listening to him, because I would sit in there for all three services doing the security detail, and it would take me, because I'm on the radio and doing stuff, it would take me all three services to absorb it. But I liked what he had to say. I thought his mixture of his own life experiences, but he brought expository preaching out. But and he hits on it every once in a while. But again, when this whole thing started, both of these guys just went to this condescending, form of rhetoric. So,
well, like Spurgeon said, discernment isn't merely knowing the difference between right and wrong. It's knowing the difference between right and almost right.
Correct.
And so David and Mike, there are a lot of Sundays you could go like 3 Sundays in a row. It's like these guys preach perfect sermons. What's the problem? It's that almost right. It'll be that day that they have like that sermon, and that infamous sermon, kind of the dueling banjos, the dueling pastors.
Yeah.
May 17th, 2020. So many people remember that day. It's like, where did that come from?
No, it's the day the music died, so as the song goes.
So what's left on the list, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, there's not you got to go read the book, but I'm reading the table of contents, but he goes through, it's again a very short read, but he comes away with just that simple thing and when you're reading Spurgeon as well, and I have a whole book on Spurgeon as he was Spurgeon was teaching his young pastors that came to his seminary classes, that it's give them Christ and only Christ. End of story. I mean, literally, that's the entire crux of his book. And he, anyway, I'm kind of beating this to death, but let me see if there's one last thing I can put into here. I don't think so.
Uh-oh, the boss is in the chat.
Which boss?
Suzanne Pigeon. So the boss didn't know that you two were live.
Uh-oh.
You're in trouble, man.
I'm not in trouble. You're in trouble, dude. Oh, that's funny. All right.
All right. So, well, I had a lot of fun, and maybe someday we could do more of this. Hey, I have more time on my hands.
Yes, you do. No, I think it's important you keep hammering away, Sal. Not only at this, but I think, getting back to, to that kind of stuff that you're showing right there, especially to kids and to high schoolers and those kinds of people. So,
yeah. Well.
Yeah. Hey, hold on. I've got one of the security guys is.
Oh boy. So, everybody, this has been a delight. Thank you, everyone who's come from AD Robles' channel, and especially thank you to all of those who watched my interview there and also my discussion here. Are you back online, Cindy?
Yeah, go ahead. That was guys are going out to Cornerstone. They've got all those dignitaries going out there tonight again. So,
wow,
for that vote, pray summit. I mean, they've had Michelle Bachmann was out there today. Josh Hawley, a couple of other congressmen talking about. Glenn Youngkin was out there this afternoon. So that's my wife's going back. She's helping out with the Family Freedom Coalition. So and some other.
I feel really blessed then that I was able to get on your schedule today. So thank you very, very much. You really added to the show. This would have been a totally different
No, it's
show.
fun, man. I'd love coming on. That's fun.
So, guys, this is sometimes what I do for those new to the channel. That's why I said it might scare some of you, but we don't do all this all the time. So you just have to kind of tune in to what works for you. We have a whole spectrum from really nerdy to kind of like what we had today, which is also fun. We get to talk about what makes a church. I wanted to say you hit on one thing there in that list that really struck me. It's about that new pastor that comes in and wants to shake things up. And Thom Rainer said that'll almost certainly destroy a church. And I'm just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, look, you can incremental, and he talks about it. You can incrementally make some changes and figure out what works and don't work. But guys who come in and say, I don't know. I'll give you another example. I've been teaching a kid. I have a client, just on the side that I teach firearms to. Kid there was another SEAL teaching him at the firing range where he couldn't teach him anymore. He said, hey, could you take this over for me? And I said, yeah, no problem. Great kid, really smart, really super bright kid. He's ninth grade. And I said, look, the first thing I'm going to do is I want to see what Bruce was teaching you, but what I don't want to do is screw up your muscle memory, and I'll just make little changes here and there. But for the most part, if you're shooting well, as long as the bullet is going into the target, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Everybody wants to say, well, you need to stand like this and do this. Dude, if you're getting ordnance on target, shut up with the legalisms. All right, just stop. So anyway, because I've started work again, I may not be able to help the kid out. And so his mother went looking for another teacher who's another SEAL who I checked out. He's legit. But the thing he told the kid was, well, I'm going to break you all down and start you from anew. And I'm like, what? What? So I got to talk to this guy and say, look, dude, I mean, I got it. But here's the wrong way to do things, and here's the right way. I'm not saying I have the right way, but the kid is, he's at 15 yards. He's, got a circle like this with a, 9mm. So, he's doing all right. So, he's shooting as well as that guy who took the headshot in Texas, so, anyway, but it's that same thing is, people, they think it's arrogance, and it's thinking you have the right way, and it's only my way. Now, do you have to be yourself? Absolutely you do. But let's make sure you're going into the right situation. So,
and what works for you or another church doesn't necessarily, I mean, everyone's different.
Is David Platt Lon Solomon? No. But what was the church they're intended for? So that's the difference.
Yeah. Anyway, Sandy, we'll connect up sometime, and this has been a great show, and really thank you for coming on today, especially after
my pleasure. It's an honor to be here with you, brother, and I'm going to go see if our AD has posted that thing yet, and so I can.
It's already posted. So
is it? Okay, I haven't seen it yet. So.
Actually, before I sign off, why don't I see how many views already? So we started at 3 p.m. and I wish he would organize his channel a little differently so it's more prominent. Already 1,500 views.
Wow. Okay. Well,
3 p.m.
You'll get 1,501 when I'm done. So how long did it
last? The interview was 1 hour, and he gave me the floor, which was just amazing because I could tell the story the way I said, I want to serve your channel. He said, I'll just give you the floor. And it was really comical. He said, yeah, you look like a really dangerous guy, Sal,
and that's the thing is, Sal is there's a reason why all the atheists after the Dillahunty debate, called you the #1 creationist, because your demeanor is that it's of a Christian walk, and we can agree to disagree. I mean, and you can still walk away as friends, and which is exactly the way you should do evangelism and apologetics is you walk away and you leave a stone in their shoe. But it's just, Dillahunty just going into his normal, spin up through the roof, and replacing logic with anger, which is what he
Yeah.
always does. I mean, that's what all those guys do,
Yeah.
Cenk
So I'm,
Uygur, that guy who's the Young Turk, he's got that channel that's it's basically funded by Soros, but he claims he has a billion hits all the time. He does the same thing. He did the same thing to Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro just hits him right back between the eyes with logic and rational and facts. So
yes. So all the viewers who actually saw this stream, the link to my interview with AD Robles is in the video description. So that'll do it. And Sandy, thanks for joining us, and thanks to all the new visitors. I wasn't able to say hi to everyone, but it's been great seeing you. So
yeah, and you guys, if you are in a church where they're preaching this stuff, by all means, reach out to Sal, and we can come back on and we can tell you how to begin to. I hesitate to use the word attack, but you can address those kinds of same issues that have been going on. As a coordinated takeover of churches by the Southern Baptist, there's no question. I mean, anybody who questions that's just a fool. So it is happening. I mean, I've talked in SFT's channel and John's channel, Maddox's channel, that guys are coming up and say, well, this is happening at our church. What do we do? And I said, go to the elders, man, and start questioning them and say, look, we're not going to put up with this nonsense. We know what's going on. Be polite about it, but be bold with humility and say, we know what's going on. And we want this stopped now. And a lot of people said, well, just leave. No, you confront evil. You do not just get up and walk away. Now, a lot of people have done that in our church, but people have stayed and said, no, we're going to stop, and it's like the 82nd Airborne shirt, I'm with the 82nd Airborne, and the SOBs are not getting past me. And that's where we have to be. So.
Suzanne. Okay, we got to say.
All right. The boss.
The boss is calling you.
The boss needs me to leave. So. All right. God bless, guys. Hey, great to meet all you new guys, and hope to see you on Sal's channel again, so we can talk and share the word.
All righty.
All right.
Good
God
night,
bless.
everyone. God bless.